Hello and welcome back to Side Quests. I'm Reese, and today I'm going to be showing you some photos and clips from my experience traveling to the birthplace of Buddha, that is Lumbini, Nepal. So, according to the Buddhist commentaries, a regional princess named Maya Devi gave birth to Siddhartha Gautama, the man who would later become the Buddha, in the town of Lumbini, in 624 BCE. One of the most sacred pilgrimage sites in Buddhism, it was only archaeologically proven in about 2011 through excavations with UNESCO that this site contains artifacts and architecture from the actual period in which the Buddha would have lived. Today, this town is located in the southern region of the nation of Nepal. And in this video, I'm going to talk about my experience visiting Lumbini, the birthplace of the Buddha, one of the UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and one of the most unique places that I've ever been. So, I was traveling there from Chitwan National Park, from the Sauraha area. So, a friend gave me a ride on his motorcycle. This was actually the husband of the lady who I was talking about in the prior video who would cook for us. And he was so nice as to give me a ride about 20 minutes to the nearby town of Ratnanagar. And this is kind of a somewhat major town. I think it has a population around 100,000 or more. Whereas compared to Sauraha and Bachauli, those are really villages in comparison. So this is the city where their bus station is. So I took the public bus, which was only a couple dollars, basically. I think $3 or $4 US in equivalent. And I transferred buses in the town of Butwal after traveling quite a ways west on the bus. And this bus ride wasn't as eventful or interesting as the ride from Kathmandu into Chitwan, because you're going from a lowland area to another lowland area. You're just going quite a ways west. So the drive was relatively straightforward. And transferring buses, I was a little bit concerned that I was going to get on the wrong one, but I had looked ahead of time as to what the name of the stations that I should tell them I'm going to, and I was completely fine. So once I transferred buses, I was able to get to the Lumbini airport, which is where the kind of final bus station was, essentially. And from there, I just took a tuk-tuk cab, which I believe cost about $7 or $8 US to the actual Lumbini Park complex and to the place that I was staying. So I ended up staying actually at a Buddhist monastery, the Korean monastery, also known as a Goomba. And this monastery is built in the traditional style, even though it was built in the mid-1900s. And I was able to get very affordable lodging and included meals at this place. Unfortunately, there was no monks at this Korean monastery because the monks were actually in Korea, doing something there for an annual trip. So I was just there with basically the small handful of folks who were staying there in the same manner that I was, and then the staff that maintained the temple and cooked the food and so on. But it was really a very pleasant environment and a very wonderful place to stay, not only because the architecture of this temple is incredibly beautiful, but also because it's right in the park complex and you can walk right outside and begin touring the area. So the overall layout of Lumbini is very interesting and unusual because it's essentially an artificially built up park. So it's a large multiple square mile rectangle essentially with a long straight canal running right down the center of it. On either side of that canal are the national monasteries, and there's quite a few that I'm going to go through as I show you the photos that I was able to take of them. On one end is an eternal flame at one end of the canal, that is, and then on the other end there is a a museum, and then a peace pagoda. At the former end, there is also the main temple complex of Lumbini itself that contains all of the historical ruins, as well as the location where the Buddha apparently took his first steps. So, starting from this end, the museum was actually closed, unfortunately, so I was not able to go there. But getting into the national temples, the first one that I was able to visit was the Chinese temple, because it was right across the street from the Korean temple. So here you can see some of the statues inside, as well as the architectural structure of the temple itself. It really reminded me of the Forbidden City in Beijing, the way that it has these large square courtyards. You'll also see a number of cows roaming around the area, and they're pretty calm, but also, you know, you don't want to run right up to a cow and mess with it too much, so. There's also this large golden statue of the Buddha as a baby, and this is a very famous icon of Lumbini, and people love to take photos next to it and stuff. Here's a couple of the other monasteries, the smaller ones that are not nationally affiliated, but they host certain retreats and so on. But in addition to the Korean and Chinese monasteries, there are also the Nepali monastery. I believe there is more than one. There is an Indian monastery. There is the Myanmar stupa, and then also a golden temple that is affiliated with Myanmar as well. There is a Royal Thai monastery, which I really liked the architecture of that one. I'll put up a few photos here. The Tibetan monastery, the Japanese monastery, the Vietnamese monastery, the Singaporean monastery, the Cambodian monastery, which was another one of my favorites. The interior of this one is just absolutely beautiful. And the texture of the exterior has this almost scaled appearance all around the entire building, with these very intricate columns as well. I was a big fan of this one. There's also Canadian, Austrian, and Russian monasteries. According to this online list, I'm not sure that I actually visited every single one, but I did get to see most of them, if only a couple of them only from a distance. Here are some of the newer buildings that are on the site, and they're mostly constructed in this brick style that's meant to mimic the historic stupas, but they have these very distinct arches on them. I'm not really sure why that was the choice, but it's a pretty interesting and distinct look. Oh, here's a photo of a kingfisher. I think this is a white-throated kingfisher that I got just on my phone, so it's a pretty bad photo. Here's a clip of a group of ladies walking their herd of goats across the street just outside the border of Lumbini. I went for a walk to try to explore the nearby town, and here's a photo from that as well. You can see some of the buildings in this nearby town. It's they had a number of little shops and things that I was able to go into. So the food that I ate while there, I was mostly eating at the Korean monastery, and they served mostly the Nepali-style dal bhat, so the rice, lentils. It was all vegetarian, I believe, with some potatoes as well. There was some broth and noodles served with dinner, and there was always kimchi because it's a Korean monastery. So I really had no problem with that food, and I had that for breakfast and dinner most days, but for lunch, oftentimes in the middle of the day, I was way out in the park and didn't want to come back to the temple, so I found a couple of other restaurants around the edge of the park. There was one where I had some potato pancakes that were very good, and there's also a essentially Western-style cafe in one of the buildings nearby the Eternal Flame, near the information center as well, which has very good coffee and cookies, so I would actually recommend that. It's pretty good, and it has a nice large window with a view of the park. The last thing I'm going to say about food is that you're going to see some ice cream vendors while you're walking through Lumbini, and you are definitely going to want to get the ice cream because there is one specific type of ice cream that these folks sell, and I'll show you what it looks like here. I have the clay pot that this ice cream is served in. I believe you can just kind of look for these or ask for the clay pot ice cream. But this is made with buffalo milk, and it's extremely creamy and delicious ice cream. Only costs, I believe, 75 cents US equivalent. So make sure to get that while you're there. It's really good. So moving on to the main temple of the Lumbini complex. The main temple is a somewhat modern construction, this white building that you see here. But leading up to it is this long, narrow path that basically what you can see in this photo is after the end of the canal. I'll also put it up on the map. And once you arrive on this island, you do have to pay a small fee as a tourist. I believe it's around $10 US equivalent or so. However, if you want to bring camera equipment for my YouTubers out there, they will charge you extra if they see that. And yes, your bags have to go through security, and they will check everything. So if you bring in camera equipment, I think they charge you something like $100 US or more, because they want a piece of that YouTube money, I guess. So just be aware of that. So the main temple is called the Maya Devi Temple, and it's named after the Buddha's mother, if you remember from the beginning. This woman was a princess when the Buddha was born, but by the time he left the royal family, if you remember the story, she was the queen of this regional kingdom. According to legend, Maya Devi had a dream of a white elephant with a lotus on its trunk entering her right side during her pregnancy, and this was interpreted as an arrival of a world leader. So outside of the main temple, though, you will see an abundance of these brick structures, and at first they might look unassuming until you realize that these are around 22 to 2600 years old, and they date literally to the time of the Buddha himself and to the very earliest Buddhists. And this is an extremely interesting site architecturally, because the Buddhist stupa, a form of temple structure, is still built today, and there's a evolutionary lineage through time of how these structures have been built. So finding examples of some of the earliest ones, basically on the very one of the earliest pilgrimage sites for Buddhism, is just incredible. So you'll see an abundance of these structures. Some of them will have plaques on them and labeling exactly what date they're thought to be from. There's also a handful of these artificial ponds outside the temple that have these little turtles and fish and stuff like that in them. On this island, there's also a number of Bodhi trees, which is the same type of tree that the Buddha was meditating underneath when he reached enlightenment. So you'll see people sitting under these and meditating as well. Another key archaeological site that helps to construct the timeline of this area is this thing known as the Asokan Pillar. And this is a structure that was actually put up by the military forces of the Emperor Asoka of, I believe, the Mauryan Empire of India. And he's a very famous emperor for many reasons, but one is that he constructed these pillars in very far reaches of his empire, and therefore spread his influence long after he was gone through these structures. So it has a script on it that dates to the time period of Asoka, as well as a inscription stating that this is the location of the birthplace of the Buddha. Just like at the temples in Kathmandu, there are an abundance of these rhesus macaque monkeys just hanging out, running around. So again, you can see them, but don't get too close or touch them. They'll bite you or something, and they have diseases. So don't mess with them, but they're pretty funny and fun to look at. So inside of the Maya Devi temple, tourists are not allowed to take photographs, so I'll see if I can find a picture of the interior online. But this is the central holy location of Lumbini itself, and that is the place where the Buddha was actually born. The exact location where he was born, and then also took his first 7 steps. Each step was marked by a lotus flower, declaring his spiritual supremacy and destiny to escape rebirth. And you can see the very stone where this apparently took place. There's also, people will give donations inside of this temple and put money down into this kind of pit that you were looking down on. That's the archaeological site itself. And this archaeological site inside of the temple is the one that I was referring to, that is essentially from the actual time period of the Buddha. So this is a structure that either was there and was literally a building in which the Buddha was born, or possibly was built very, very soon after, or very, very soon after by early followers. So at the far end from the artificial island where the Maya Devi temple and the ancient stupas are located is the Japanese World Peace Pagoda. And this is a beautiful white structure that you'll see here. And these are also Buddhist monuments. They were designed and built by Japanese Buddhists, and it is located about 3.2 kilometers from the Maya Devi temple. So it's quite a walk. And I was actually walking this entire time. Because I had multiple days there, I was able to take my time. But if you only have a single day in Lumbini, there are a wide array of ways to get around. There are people offering tuk-tuk rides and various ways to transport you from temple to temple, so you can actually see the entire park within a day, if you do that. But I walked it, so I got a lot of steps in. So back to the Peace Pagoda, this essentially was built as a symbol of peace, and they started being built in Japanese cities after World War II, mainly by a single designer, I believe. His name was Fujii. And so they began being built by Japanese Buddhists all over the world, and by 2000 there was 80 of these structures all around the world, in Europe, Asia, and there are even 4 in the US. So on the same end of the park as the Peace Pagoda, there is a crane sanctuary, and this sanctuary aims to conserve the endangered species, the saurus crane. And this is a huge crane with a bright red head, standing up to about 1.8 meters, or 5'11", and weighing about 13 pounds. These are endangered or vulnerable. They have a population of about 30,000 spread around around South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Northern Australia. But the subspecies in Nepal and India is particularly endangered, I believe. There are only 4 known mating pairs of these cranes located in the park that they've confirmed. So one of the other main attractions of Lumbini that I did not take part in is the meditation retreats. And these are highly intensive Buddhist meditation retreats that, you don't have to be Buddhist necessarily by any means, but they're teaching you these very intricate and thought-out practices that you have to spend days and days very slowly getting the hang of and mastering these different types of mindfulness exercises. And so if you're interested in that type of thing, don't take them lightly. They are very intensive from what I heard from a handful of people that I talked to that were able to do them. But if you are interested in that type of thing, definitely look into it online. So traveling back to Chitwan from Lumbini, I took a tourist bus line. I did not take the public bus again. So there are stalls outside of the main gates of Lumbini, and there are people there that sell tourist bus tickets to Kathmandu, Pokhara, and Chitwan, or at least to Ratnanagar outside of Chitwan. So I believe it was only about $12 US. so maybe twice the price of the public bus that I took. And it saved the headache of that bus transfer in Butwal. It was a little bit faster without having to make that transfer as well. And that also allows me to tell you about this option, because if you're visiting Lumbini from any of the other majorly visited cities in Nepal, these buses are available and they are a bit more convenient than the public bus lines. You can also fly to Lumbini. As I said, there is an airport there. But the flights, they cost around 100 to 125 US dollars. So, if you want to spend that kind of money, you can do that. But I did not, so I took the bus. And I wanted to see the countryside as well. The flight's only about 30 minutes from any of these cities, whereas the bus ride takes a few hours. You get to really see the countryside, and it's nice. So that wraps up my time in Lumbini, Nepal. I hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe.